Hello, welcome to An Eye Toward the Occult with me, your host, who shall remain nameless. It's a quiet night in Los Angeles. Um, the cold has added to COVID insofar as no one's out. I live in the heart of the city, right between the Los and the Angeles. And even still, you walk down the street and there's nobody. And I think, there are a lot of ways in which the rug has been pulled out from under people, not always in the same ways. I know a lot of people lost their jobs, for example. Um, Other people got COVID and had to deal with serious health complications or medical bills. For my part, I've been fortunate enough to not really suffer from either of those two things. But there have been other ways, definitely, in which the past 12 months have thrown me for a loop. And, it's not until the things that you took for granted in your life come under threat that you realize how much you appreciate just normal living and how much you wish you could get back to normal. And I don't want to say that, you know, that there's anything good about misfortune, but it does tend to have a focusing effect. And I know that, I've had weeks where I'm thinking about X, Y, and Z, worried about A, B, and C, and my sense of what's important in life and what's worth getting reactive about. I start to lose my perspective, right? But then all it takes is, someone in my family gets really sick, or a certain relationship that's really important to you comes under threat in some way. Someone's going to move. And I think a lot of the time on the spiritual path, you know, we interpret misfortune in a lot of different ways. But not all those ways are helpful. Sometimes it helps to, when you're running into the consequences of your own boneheaded mistakes, then yeah, from a spiritual perspective, maybe you should think about your karma a little bit. Or on the other hand, if you're into occultism, witchcraft, and magic, then you might think that, misfortune is a sign that your magic is backfiring on you, or that you're not as far along as you thought you were, or that someone else is not as far along as they should be. It's funny. The things we tell ourselves in the face of misfortune. And I think in the witchcraft community and the occultism community more generally, um, we don't emphasize enough how grateful we should be for normal life, where that includes, excuse me, all the stresses of normal life. It's like you go to CVS and you're frustrated that you have to wait in line behind a bunch of people to pick up your prescription or whatever. But then all of a sudden, let's say there's some sort of super lockdown, like there was a bunch of curfews going on in LA for a while in conjunction with COVID lockdowns and things because of the riots. And then all of a sudden maybe you can't get your prescription at all. The CVS is shut down, or they've closed the roads, or they're not letting people drive. Certainly when it comes to relationships, um, it's such a human tendency to turn our relationships into these petty things, to always be thinking about the ways in which they could be improved, the ways in which the other person could improve. But then you face the prospect of not seeing that person again at all. And all of a sudden you would kill just for, one of those moments that just to be around the person, right? And even to be around them in a moment where they're doing something that irritates you, right? I imagine it's like if you have kids, right? And they really piss you off sometimes and you hate them sometimes. But then they move away to college and you're like, oh man, what I wouldn't give for even one of the bad days when they were really pissing me off. So I think a lot of the time we talk about gratitude in the witchcraft community. Gratitude practices and other positive thinking type practices do get mentioned. But I know for my part, a lot of the time, what I end up being grateful for are, like my spiritual progress or just the fact that ritual magic works. I'll be grateful for certain things, excuse me, certain things, but then really not grateful for other things, minor inconveniences. And so I do find that it helps sometimes to face even just the possibility of completely losing something. And that shifts your perspective a bit. So I think what I'd like to see more from witches and occultists, magicians, whatever you want to call yourselves, is a focus on, again, not the far out stuff, not the weird stuff, or not the esoteric spiritual stuff, but to be able to focus on things that don't seem spiritual at all, and to sanctify them, if you like, consecrate them and make them spiritual. So that you cannot take them for granted. And you can keep a level head, not lose your perspective. One way I find that is a very powerful tool for this is the deathbed perspective, I call it. When you're dealing with some frustration in a relationship or in line at CVS, you take the deathbed perspective. You think, well, what if you were on your deathbed right now and you could feel your body starting to shut down and that these were your last moments, the last minutes of your life. You could feel your consciousness shutting down. Now think about what you would think then about this moment that you're having now, say being in line at CVS. And whenever I run through this exercise for myself, I always think, oh man, what I wouldn't give, I would kill to be caught in line at CVS waiting for my prescription. Because when you face the prospect of losing it all, somehow even the dirty bits begin to shine. I would love to see more of an emphasis in the witchcraft community on the mundane, on the everyday, on how do we make boring things magical and magical things boring so that we don't blow smoke up our own asses, so that we can stay anchored to our fellow human beings, and so that we don't lose perspective and become ungrateful like a spoiled brat. So anyway, if you watched this video, thank you. I'm amazed. And, please leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Give your own thoughts, your own experiences. Feel free to ask a question. That's my favorite thing. If you have any ideas for any future videos, that would be even better. So thank you. Like and subscribe. And more to come, for sure.